Hi, everybody, and welcome to Lights of the Round Table. My name is Susanna, and I brought back Kirk from Kirk's Law Corner, who was with us about a few days ago with the Brunson case. And I brought him in to talk about a little bit or go by a couple of the points that probably some people forgot about or don't quite comprehend, and also to go through some of the comments, which were pretty good. So with the title, I guess it's going to be "The People Are Learning the Procedure for Correcting Government." And actually, this is coming from one of our viewers. So thank you for that comment. And now the title. So Kirk, thank you for coming back. And we were looking, and I was looking through some of the comments. It was very well received. I think that the Brunsons, I commend them. We should commend them. It's become a public case and a wonderful one, but it really is about what this particular person said. The people are learning the procedure for correcting government, and we're not there. This is baby steps. So I wanted to start with one of the questions we had over here, which is, and I think most of it was the oath. People were having an issue with the Supreme Court not respecting the oath. Comment.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. And this is an exciting time for all of us. Knowledge is power. When we gain this knowledge, we get this power, and then we have to learn how to wield the power. I have to commend him again for taking action, doing something. At a bare minimum, this just brings awareness. So when we're talking about cause of action and due process of law, we have to follow the law. Everybody's supposed to follow the law. No man is above the law. So this is where we really need to look at what it says and follow that process, those remedies and relief. The remedy is due process of law. What's the process that is due? Now, there are different processes that are due depending on who they are, who you are. And our one-of-a-kind form of government created by our founders is such a brilliant masterpiece. It's a very well-oiled machine when it's running right. So when people say, well, they violated their oath or a breach of oath of office, I'm not hearing the conduct that supports the claim that they're in breach of oath of office. And then the thing is we have to comprehend here is that our government, that what we think is government today, is not legitimate government, is government de facto. Due to the Reconstruction Acts of 1871, they fundamentally altered our form of government, and we are being subjected to pretended acts of legislation, again, which is a declared act of tyranny in the Declaration of Independence. But what it really boils down to is because the people are not properly assembled. The government de jure, lawful. Well, what does lawful mean? Full of law. Well, what's the body of law that dictates the process and the powers? Because that's what jurisdiction is. Diction is the words, and juris is law. So what body of law are we going to follow?
Okay. But that's a missing piece, but yet people don't know about it. So how do we start reconstructing ourselves to be, because I think, I'm sorry if I'm a little bit I'm thinking as my wheels are turning. One thing is that people are used to fighting the government de facto, using the Constitution, yet I think that what you're trying to say, though, is that you're going through a common law process that people don't know about. And it has nothing to do with how can you defend yourself in against a constitution that is not the real form of government that we have right now. I mean, defending yourself against a de facto is one way, using the Constitution, which is what we've been doing all along. But you're saying that, no, wait a second. Yeah, it's okay. But now, in order for us to retake our country, we really need to go through a de jure or through the common law, which really nobody has really walked those steps and the process. And I think people are getting mistaken with what those are.
Yeah. So like the origin of the word law, LAW. A lot of people can say, oh yeah, that's law of the land, law of the air, and law of the water. Oh yeah, we get it, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is it's the common law of the land. Oh. So what body of law are we going to follow? The common law of the land, because law of the land literally means due process of law. It's synonymous. So where does due process of law come from? It comes from the common law. And then we have things like parliamentary practice, part of the common law. So we have to go to the body of law, jurisdiction, for the remedy and relief. And we've all been told that, well, the common law, that's just stare decisis, case law. Okay, in a monarchy, through the judicial branch is how they made law, because what they were doing back then, like the Magna Carta, they were going through the court, the king's bench, to beg for their rights and fight for their rights, and made case law, law of the case, and only applies to the parties to the case. Even Chris Ann Hall mentions this. So we have to comprehend even the words that we're using. But in our form of government, in our nation called America, which started essentially in 1606 with the first Charter of Virginia and started the American common law, and separating from the Roman Catholic Church, Catholicism as an ideology who goes under the law of the air, morals, principles, souls, trusts is the law of the air. And the king is claiming to be the sovereign instead of God being the sovereign. And they dictate the morals and principles instead of from a root ideology of a religion. That's religion, conscience, ideologies, morals, principles. So we want to be very careful about what bodies of law we cite as authority. So in this instance, excuse me, in this instance, we want to be very wise in our choice of words, diction, because the words we use put us under what law, body of law. So back to the root. We have to start somewhere, right?
Right.
Fundamentally and principally, we have to start somewhere. So even like mathematics, we have to start somewhere. What are the principles of mathematics that dictate the correct answer every time, regardless of our feelings, emotions, and our opinions? Those are facts. Those are hard, solid principles. The rule of something. Rule, the word rule doesn't stand by itself. It's a rule of something. So like the rules of mathematics, like the rule of law, like maxims of law, or a constitution is the rule of law. So the plus sign, the minus sign, the multiplication sign, the division sign, here's your sign, okay? When you read that equation, those signs dictate particular conduct. That conduct dictates the correct answer, the equal signs. And the way to check it is you do it backwards. So 2 plus 2 equals 4. So what is the exact opposite on the equation? You got a plus sign over here. What's the opposite of plus? Is minus. So
Mhm.
you swap the equal sign and the plus sign. Now you've got 4 minus 2 equals 2. That's your checks and balances, the equal and opposite. And if you're not using the equal and opposite, you're not you're not checking your math. Like 2 plus 2 equals 5. Well, 5 minus 2 doesn't equal 2. So we got a problem here with the answer. Not the equation, but the answer. Because the fundamental principles, the rules of mathematics, dictate the correct answer. Or you are insane. You're not of sound mind. It's your only two choices. So again, mathematics is logic and reason. Logically, we know the fundamental principles of mathematics. So therefore, we must go to the logical principles of the rule of law. This is the rule over law, maxims of law. So we need to be making sure that we're going to the proper rules of law when
Mhm.
we're dealing with law, the right body of law.
So, to simplify it for others, where does the common law come from? And
That is it's a fundamental question, right? We need to ask that first. Where do we start?
Mhm.
In the beginning, God created all things, right?
Mhm.
Including mankind. That's what's known as the word sovereign, the power to create. So God is the sovereign. God creates all things and endows mankind, with sovereignty or dominion, free dominion over the land, the air, and the water. All be darned, the word law.
Mhm.
Law of the land, law of the air, and the law of the water. And man was endowed with freedom, dominion over all of that. And therefore, man is to be free, dumb, and independent from all things created by man. Because if we're going to be considered equals, nobody nobody's higher than another. No man is higher than another man. We have to establish these fundamental principles, the rule of law. This is known as the laws of nature, at the root of all law, because God is the sovereign and the creator. And then when we get into the uh, primitive laws of nature, there are 6 primitive laws of nature. The very first primitive law of nature is when man is properly organized. It's a key word. We know the difference between moral good and moral evil. You're either of sound mind or you are insane. We go to these principles. What are the morals here? Well, we could look at like the 10 commandments. I think every man, woman on earth or anywhere else could come to a reasonable conclusion based in reality that murder is wrong morally. I don't need a statute or a code or even the Constitution to tell us that, because wrong body of law. The body of law here is known as the common law, common sense law, or the law that is common to all mankind. Who does that apply to? Well, it's at the root. So at the root, we're building on top of, just like you build a house. And even the Bible tells us to build our houses on solid rock and not on the sand, because your house will fall. You want it to be on solid. So what are we building on? We're building the framework, like a framework of a house is built on a foundation. The foundation is poured on solid rock. Well, let's discuss the rock first, because you can't pour the foundation unless you have a solid rock to build on. So that is the laws of nature. Now, there's a body of law, the laws of nature. referred to as the Law of Nations or the Principles of the Laws of Nature, written by Emer D. Vattel. And it is regarded as international law. So we got a hierarchy of law here in the law of creation. And back to the being properly organized is assembling. Assembling what? What we're going to build. This is the building blocks of what we're going to create, in which I'm gonna share here right straight from the Law of Nations. Hopefully, yes. So this is the preliminaries of the Law of Nations, very kind of beginning. The idea and general principles of the Law of Nations. Nations or states, which is a state of being, are bodies politic. Societies of men united together. That's that primitive organization, primitive law of nature, for the purpose of promoting their mutual safety and advantage by the joint efforts of their combined strength. Such a society has her affairs and her okay, now we're talking about her. We're talking about, we're creating something here, are we not? She deliberates and takes resolutions in common, thus becoming a moral person. Okay, not man. See, look at the words that we're using here. It's man or men to a person who possesses an understanding and a will particular to herself, as is susceptible of obligations and rights. Obligations, rights impose duties. To establish on a solid foundation, just what I just was talking about. You got to have a solid foundation. You got to have a bedrock for the foundation to be poured on. The obligation rights of nations is the design of this work. The law of nations is the science which teaches the rights subsisting between nations or states and the obligations correspondent to those rights. The science which teaches the rights, rights as the law.
And this is called the international law during those times. This was the international law.
Yes. The law of nations or the laws of nature has been regarded as international law for a very long time.
Yeah.
Since the inception of mankind. We've just walked away from it, ignored it. And we've got bad men and women, evil, that are, acting under Satan, which is Satan is the deceiver of all men. So when we don't learn this stuff for ourselves and we're just listening to other people out there and just going with the flow of, well, that's just the way it is. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Unless we learn how it's supposed to be, we're not going to be able to tell the difference between what is lawful and what is not lawful, what is morally good and what is morally evil, what the moral person was that's supposed to be created by the sovereign body politic, policy. Okay? In this treatise, it will appear in what manner states as such ought to regulate their actions. So right here, we're talking about personal jurisdiction. Okay? We shall examine the obligations of a people as well towards themselves as towards other nations. And by that means, we shall discover the rights which result from those obligations. So back to the beginning here, nations or states are body politics. So this is where we have to comprehend what a country is. It's a territory And the nation is the country or body politic, the territorial landmass.
Mm-hmm.
So we have different. I mean, we reread from the beginning there. For our nation called America, these United States, the Union, united under one state of being, which is Christianity as an ideology. But we are all supposed to be independent, sovereign nation states. That's what makes us different countries. But we come together as a union and we all say, look, we're going to come under this one state of being and build our foundation on solid rock. International law comes first, the laws of nature.
Which is what our forefathers were doing anyways, because they were commercemen and businessmen. So this was the foundation to everything, and it was international. It was what it was used.
Yes.
So based on that, you have your common law, and then common law then creates the governments or the constitution and blah, 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 blah. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But what are the steps to get there?
Exactly.
We have to properly organize.
Right. And
then
so that, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I got stuck.
Okay. So this is what we have to comprehend here. Who are the people?
Now we're talking people in each territory that they need to assemble to create their laws and duties and responsibilities and all that stuff.
We have to answer the question, who are the people?
Mm-hmm. Who are they?
Okay. Again, diction, words have meanings. So we got man, there was showing people, and then we refer to all the time here in America, we the people have all political power. Okay, those are political rights, which are different than natural rights. Natural rights is at the bedrock. We're building on top of that to secure these rights from infringement. But who are the people? Oh, I may have went way too far. I need to mark these down. Book one still.
Now you have so many things. I would get lost myself.
Yeah, I'm way too far. I think. Need to get back into book one. There we go. Here we go.
You see, without knowing a little bit of the history, you cannot put the pieces together. And that's what has been happening. We don't have that.
Yeah, you can't see the picture of the puzzle unless you put the puzzle together.
Yeah.
You know, a puzzle, when you get it in the box, it's not put together. It shows you on the cover of the box what the picture looks like. But when you dump the pieces out, you don't get to see the picture until you put it together, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentally and principally, you got to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
You know what? You just made an analogy over there is that many people buy toys. They never read the instructions. And if you don't read the instructions, how do you really know how it works? And that's basically what I see what's happening in our country. They all just want to have it easy peasy without having to go back and actually read the instructions. So are you still lost?
Yeah, it's like the rules of game of chess, the
Hmm.
principles of chess. How are you going to play the game of chess if you don't know the principles or the rules of chess?
Correct. And I'm just going, what you look for, what have you found what you're looking for yet?
I know it's right here. It's getting
Because uh,
close.
okay, because there's one thing that I would like to remind the audience. If you've had at all listened to what Trump has said all along, he's always going by the rule of law. And he does want to bring and wants to give us this nation, but it has to be under the rules of law. And we're missing the whole point, I think, with many podcasters out there. People are expecting the military to come in and be able to just liberate us from evil or something. But there's some little, there has to be, well, we will talk about this in another time, but we need to revisit our foundations to really what we really need to do in order for that grandiose day to come when the military says, hey, we clean up our mess, we clean up the mess, we are ready to have a government. Where is it? And that's another key point that people are missing. So I want to bring you, there's so much to talk and there's so much to
Yes.
do. I don't want to, I already got out of, out of subject, but go ahead. Let's reel in ourselves and bring back a little bit of back to the basics of what we need to do. Go ahead.
Okay. So the reason why I'm coming right here is because even in the Constitution for the United States or Constitution of the United States,
Mhm.
it talks about the qualifications of a president being a natural born citizen. Now, we talk about statuses, okay? And we look at history of law, and including this right here. We're seeing men, we're seeing people, and then we're going to talk about citizen. Now, in the Constitution, where it talks about the qualifications of president being a natural born citizen, when you look at that and they go, oh, see Vattel. This is written by Emerdy Vattel. This is where they're referencing, and it will say Vattel, section 212. That's what we're about to read. You see the bottom of the screen there, subsection 212, citizens. This is where the definition of a citizen comes from
So in
as
other words,
international law, the law of
the
nations.
nations.
We don't get to redefine what a citizen is because this is already part of the bedrock that would be subverting the law of creation. Okay, that's redefining the words and what jurisdiction is. And we have no authority to alter the fundamental law, the principles. So this is book 1, chapter 19 of our native country and several things that relate to it. And this is where we get into what I was just saying about a country. Okay, what is our country? The whole of the countries possessed by a nation and subject to its laws.
Go.
So the nation is called America and
Mm.
all of the countries within it.
Oh,
America is not a
wow.
country, it is a nation.
And the states are,
The states are countries within the nation.
and we're not calling ourselves countries.
Now, so
Ah,
anytime that we see a constitution of the state of, this is the corporate constitution after the Reconstruction Act, because that's not a government, it's a corporation.
okay.
So a state of, go ahead.
Okay. Go slow because many people probably think that their state constitution is legit. And there's only a few. So only the original 13 countries or territories, right? And nothing else, correct? No, none of the other states are legit because then that's de facto. Am I getting
Well,
too complicated?
right up until the Reconstruction Act,
Okay.
okay? Because they weren't being called Constitution for the state of until later. when this change to the corporation happened in 1871 with the Reconstruction Acts. Before that, they were the Constitution of Pennsylvania, the Constitution of, and there were other states of being that were allowed to join the Union as we purchased more land heading out west. And then the other thing that we have to comprehend is the territory, the landmass of Virginia, which is the metes and bounds are in the first charter of Virginia, 1606. Okay. Many of the colonies were settled within the territory of Virginia. And this is a fact of law, fundamental principle of law that we need to comprehend of how this all came about and why we reference the Lee's resolutions, the Virginia Declaration of Rights, June 12th. Lee's resolution was June 7th. June 12th, this was all done in a Continental Congress. June 12th, 1776 is the Virginia Declaration of Rights as the theoretical foundation of all government when creating the new nation called America here. And we're declaring our separation from Great Britain as a nation. We have to declare the ideology. That's how we lay down the law, through declarations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So the Virginia Declaration of Rights declares Christianity as our ideology, not Catholicism. And through the test of time is what we've been trying to separate from. Reading the Magna Carta of 1215, they talk about trying to separate from the Roman Catholic Church. And the Magna Carta means Great Charter, the Great Charter of Liberty. We have liberated ourselves from the crown, from the king, and we're going to start assuming the powers of God and not the king. So that was the first time in history where the people really stood up and put a sword to King John's throat and said, look, you're going to grant us this liberty, or we're just going to kill you and go throughout the castle, and we're going to kill your whole family bloodline, and we're going to wipe you off the face of the earth because we're tired of this tyranny. Okay? That's what happened in 1215. The Great Charter of Liberty. So this is when the ball started rolling to where mankind started asserting their rights from God, from the laws of nature, that the king was subverting.
Mm-hmm.
Subverting God's law. So let's read this. What is our country? The whole of the country is possessed by a nation and subject to its laws. Wait. Countries to its laws. Okay. Forms. These key words, as we have already said, it's territory. So, like reading the Organic Act for the Territory of Idaho, 1863. So we started off as an actual independent sovereign nation state territory, as an independent country that's part of the nation called America. Okay? So how did we switch from territory to state? The state of a corporation in 1889, which is after 1871. So technically speaking, the Constitution for the state of Idaho is a fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because Congress had no authority to alter our form of government. Only the people have that power, not the representatives.
Okay.
They only were granted or delegated certain powers, in which those powers were never delegated. That was back up there, Book 1, Chapter 3, Section 34. The question was asked, do these legislators have the authority to alter the fundamental law or the Constitution? And the answer is no.
Okay.
You can't alter the laws of your own creation. The people, the sovereign body politic, creates the Constitution. So you got to have the body politic before you can create the instrument of government. The conscience.
Correct. So was that, okay, let's go back. So we had the 13 original territories, countries. Okay. Trying to be careful with what I'm learning over here. And so what happened after? So you're telling me that the rest of everything else is a state. So let's go back to the Brunson's case, and I'm going to jump around a little bit because I want to move on a little bit. So what happens
Let
when
me
you?
let me get in. Let me get into this next section with
Okay.
citizens first before we jump.
Okay. All right.
Okay, because we need to learn these statuses from the root of all law, international law, which is unalterable. Okay, we're starting from the beginning here. So right here, citizens and natives. The citizens are the members of the civil society bound. Those are the key words, members and bound to this society by certain duties. Now, the word emolument is any advantage, profit, or gain received due to one's position of employment or holding of office. So the Constitution actually enumerates the emoluments of the office. Now, bound to the society by certain duties and subject to its authority. So this is after the creation, because you can't have a citizen that's bound by the Constitution without having the Constitution first. You got to create the Constitution, the instrument of government. So this refers to Article 6, Clause 3. It specifically says members are to be bound, both state and federal, whether you're part of the legislative branch, executive branch, or judicial branch, either elected or appointed in a position of public trust, which is an employee. You're hired to fill that seat. We, the people who created the instruments of government, require them to be bound by the Constitution and subject to its authority. Okay? So now we know the term citizen, but let's keep reading because this is natural born citizen from the Constitution itself. Bound to the society by certain duties and subject to its authority. They equally participate in its advantages. See how this ties together with the word emolument. The advantage, profit, or gain. Just compensation. Payments for their services rendered. But that imposes a duty. Like the president, there's the president and the commander in chief. There's two different duties. They're persons. One person is the president. The other person is a commander in chief. Same thing with the governor. Governor is the person, and so is the commander in chief at this country, state level. So, and they are bound to perform those duties. Man out here on the street, which we refer to as inhabitants, which is the very next section. So we'll define these two words and grasp the concept of the statuses from international law at the root of all law here. What the difference is between a man, inhabitants, and the citizens or people. Okay, and subject to authority, the natives, or here it is, natural born citizens. This is exactly where our founders pulled from. That's in the Constitution as a requirement to run for office as president. Are those born in the country? Why do you think our birth certificate wants to know what they say state were you born in? Well, I was born in Idaho. I was born in California. Those are countries. Okay? Of parents who are citizens. And it's both. So that's what a natural born citizen is where both parents are already citizens, which is why Obama actually was disqualified per the Constitution to run for president because his father was born in Kenya. He's not a natural born citizen. Both parents were not born in America. It's where you are born.
Yep.
But read further here. Are those born in the country of parents who are citizens? As a society, And this is the reason why. As a society cannot exist and perpetuate itself otherwise than by the children of the citizens. So from international law, the fundamental principle, logic, and reason that we're using here, why it's this way, is to protect our way of life, our ideology, how we want to live. So that way the children are natural born and they're raised under this ideology so they know how our form of government is supposed to be. Those children naturally follow the condition of their fathers. This is so important to comprehend, that you follow the conditions of the father. This is from the common law, from the Bible, and succeed to all their rights. The society is supposed to desire this in consequence of what it owes to its own preservation. And it is presumed as a matter of course, due process of law, that each citizen on entering into society reserves to his children the right of becoming members of it.
Very much the Old Testament, Genesis, sort of.
Yes.
It's just all up there.
The country of the fathers is therefore that of the children, and these become true citizens merely by their tacit consent. Now, this has been misconstrued by many people out there because of that phraseology. Oh, it's tacit agreement, tacit consent. Okay, fraud vitiates everything from its inception, void ab initio, as a fundamental principle. Thou shalt not bear false witness. That's the law that makes it unlawful to misconstrue or unlawfully obtain a contract. But let's see. We shall soon see whether on their coming to the years of discretion or of lawful age, they may renounce their right and what they owe to the society in which they were born. I say that in order to be of the country, it is necessary that a person be born of a father who is a citizen. For if he is born there of a foreigner, it will be only the place of his birth and not his country. So let's say you're over abroad, which this goes into, and I'm not going to get there, but just briefly. Let's say the mother and father are on vacation over in a foreign country, and they give birth, born, to their child. Now, where are they from? This is what this is saying is international law, that just because the child was born over there does not make that their country. They follow the conditions of the father, where they are from, where they are a natural born citizen. Okay? So, let's get into who are the inhabitants. Now, this is where we have to draw the conclusion that our founders did here from this, because it's in the Articles of Confederation. It's in many of the 1776 era constitutions before the Articles of Confederation, talks about the inhabitants. Imagine that. It's right here at the root of all law, international law, that the inhabitants, as distinguished from citizens, are foreigners, which means lack of personal jurisdiction, who are permitted to settle and stay in the country, bound to the society by their residence. So a lot of people misconstrue, I don't want to be a resident. Yes, you do. Yes, we do want to be a resident. They are subject to the laws of the state of being, the common law, while they reside in it, and they are obliged to defend it. This is why what we call the militia, every able-bodied male, ages 18 to 64 are already automatically duty-bound to be in the militia. This is how our founders set up our form of government, because they knew that we needed to defend ourselves per the laws of nature, the right to self-defense. Okay?
And we
That's where
lost
the
it.
right to keep and bear arms comes from, is the laws of nature, not the Second Amendment.
But we lost that. You don't have to go to the military.
All right. So then here we go. While they reside, and they are obliged to defend it because it grants them protection, though they do not participate in all the rights of citizens. Okay, the inhabitants do not have political power. This is the clear separation between man in the private and government, citizens in the public.
Yeah.
And that word is so misconstrued, talking about, well, you're in the public, you're over here at the park, you're out on the. No, that's not what this means. Public means public servant, members of the society who are bound by the Constitution. That's what public means. Private means man in the private, who is an inhabitant, who may be a resident. He set up his, he declared, I'm moving here. I'm declaring that I live here now, and I'm establishing this as my residence, and I'm binding myself to the common law of this country first. Okay? They enjoy only advantages which the law or custom gives them. What is the law or custom? Christianity. What is the ideology of the nation? The perpetual inhabitants are those who have received the right of perpetual residence. Now, this is where, we have to put these pieces of the puzzle together. These are a kind of citizens of an inferior order and are united to the society without participating in all its advantages. We call them the people. Their children follow the condition of their fathers, and as the state has given to these the right of perpetual residence, their right passes to their posterity. So this is it, right? Now, the next one here, a nation or the sovereign who represents it, the people, may grant to a foreigner the equality of a citizen by admitting him to the body of the political society. This is called naturalization. So see, this is where it's been misconstrued about, immigration, naturalization. No, immigration is one thing and naturalization is another.
Yep, you are right.
Okay?
That's been misconstrued.
There are some states in which the sovereign cannot grant to a foreigner all the rights of citizens.
Bravo.
For example, that of holding public offices, like president. We can't grant you that power because you're not a natural born citizen.
Yeah.
Okay? And where consequently he has the power of granting only an imperfect naturalization. It is here a regulation of the fundamental law, which limits the power of the prince. In other states, as in England and Poland, the prince, remember, this is before our formation of government, cannot naturalize a single person without the concurrence of the nation represented by its deputies. Finally, there are states, as for instance England, where the single circumstance of being born in the country naturalizes the children for a foreigner.
Of a foreigner.
We didn't do that here.
Right.
Let's just stop there.
Yeah.
And that's the key foundations of state. I don't see the word national being defined here. And national didn't come into being as a noun until 1887, which is after the Reconstruction Acts. And the only place to find that term defined is in the United States Code. Code is not law, and it's United States Code.
Correct. And
there's your key. The United States is the corporation created under the Reconstruction Acts, providing these essential governmental services until the people reassemble the de jure government and fill those seats. Many people have said, our de jure seats are vacant. Well, technically speaking, yes and no, because there's somebody down there at the Capitol sitting in those seats. So don't tell me that those seats are empty, because they're not. Somebody's sitting in them.
All right.
because we have to provide this provisional government, or the nation and the society as a whole would collapse.
So you're telling everybody that basically what we need to do is go back to our foundations, go to our solid rock Bible, utilize the the Book of Nations, which is actually what it was employed back then around the globe for international law, commercial, and everything else. That was the foundations. So
Yep.
we need to repopulate ourselves according to what our founding father, actually, it wasn't, I think it was the Articles of Confederation that states that. And I think that term is called social compact. And so once we do that, then we form our country, which people are saying states, but they're not. But now you're clarifying that our states should be actually called countries, and then form part of our nation. And then we can, so basically there's a lot of things that we need to do in order to retake our republic according to the rule of law, which is very much what Trump has always been hammering on. Is that the message?
Essentially, yes. The thing is this stuff's already been built,
Okay.
right? Except for like Idaho came after. Except we do have our Organic Act, which is before the Reconstruction. That was 1863. So we need to go back prior to 1871, before the Reconstruction Acts, and look at how this is supposed to be and go from there.
Okay.
Right? Those are the seats that need to be filled. But like I said, there's somebody sitting in those seats down here at the Capitol. The legislative seats, the governor, the secretary of state, the treasurer. This is all part of our Republican form of government, those seats in government. Those still lawfully exist. There's just that this government de facto, they have to provide these essential services until we, reassemble.
Okay. All right.
You got to declare it.
And so how many states are there to declare this? How many states are left? I mean, what do we need? 2/3? I understand.
All of them, really. Well, okay. I think I misunderstood your question there. The fact is it's we would just assume where it was left off, because it's still sitting there.
Okay.
The original Constitution, instrument of government, is still sitting there. The government de jure.
Okay.
But the government de facto has created these constitutions for the state of versus the Constitution of Pennsylvania, the Constitution of Virginia. They got the state of. So we would go back to the original constitutions of Pennsylvania and get rid of the state of Pennsylvania Constitution. Like I was even discussing this with my longtime friend now, Tony Pellegrino. He's out in Pennsylvania, and I went and pulled up the Constitution of the state of Pennsylvania. I'll be darned, what's the date of that Constitution? It's after the Reconstruction Acts. Where's all the original succession of law from the original Constitution of Pennsylvania?
Did they abolish it? Did they hit it?
No, again, this is just going, it's over there, and this is the state of Pennsylvania versus the Constitution of Pennsylvania. So they've essentially subverted the law and created this new constitution. So there's two constitutions, the government de jure and the government de facto.
So that's where everybody's a little bit confused on everything. So now let's go. All right. After this scholarly class. Okay. So now what do we do? Because we wanted to know, people want to know, how do we actually get rid of this de facto government? And you say you have to go through legislature, the legislature process. Now, I also noticed that when we were doing the show, people were confusing legislature as Congress, but you were actually implying the state. And a few is that correct, or what happened there?
Okay. So when we talk about the legislature, so we have the legislative branch, the executive branch, and judicial branch. That comes from the Constitution. That's a different body of law. Now, again, what body of law before the Constitution, because we got to have some sort of body of law that we're following to create this foundation and create the frame, like a house. You frame in the house on top of the foundation. Okay, that's what a constitution is, the framework for government. And then you got to site it, put the siding on, and insulate and electrical and plumbing,
Mm-hmm.
all these inner workings of the house of what you're building. Imagine it's called a house. Why do we call it the House? The legislative branch is known as the House, which consists of two parts, the House of Representatives, or the representatives, and the Senate. That makes up the House.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? What we got to have before? We're talking about framework, but we got to get back over here to the political power that's inherent in the people. So who are the people? Technically speaking, it's the business owners or
Mm-hmm.
the inhabitants that are a
And that
different
territory.
kind of citizen that are not the members of the Constitution or members of the legislative, executive, judicial branch created under the Constitution. That's a different citizen. Those are the civil servants, the public, in the public. Over here is the private at common law, the law that's common to all. That law over there really is not common to all. It's only common to those citizens, the ones that are members, who are bound by that and all things that are created under that. So we got this, this hierarchy. God, man, the people. Then we go below this line and we go Constitution, citizens. Then we go statutes, contracts, contract law under the Constitution that they are bound by.
Right.
It only applies to those in the public. So it doesn't apply over here because now they're trying to go back up above the line and they can't. They can't. That's that proverbial line in the sand. God, mankind is to be free and independent of what's below the line. That's that, again, proverbial line drawn in the sand. You can't cross that line.
So therefore, that's why I think there was a bit of confusion with constitutionalists interpreting Constitution, but it depends to what you're interpreting it to. Is it the Constitution that you're basing as a de facto, or the Constitution to organic law, to the organic law? But then how do you follow the path when you're still fighting the de facto? And I think there's a little bit of confusion as to the processes and the rules that must be properly done in order to succeed in this war of de facto evil versus good and good versus evil, right? So you were saying all along, no, you have to go to your legislature, but you're talking legislature from your state to do the petition. So I'm talking about the petition that you were talking about. Brunson.
Okay, you're confusing two different things.
All right, I'm confusing two different things.
We're talking about exercising a right versus government.
Yeah.
Okay. So fundamentally and principally, if we're going to say that because of the war and the Congress didn't reassemble and all this, so the powers that be said, okay, Commander-in-Chief, Texas v. White, Article 4, Section 4, as Commander-in-Chief, only, not President, as Commander-in-Chief, has the power to set up provisional government, pending the outcome of the war and the people reassemble. It can't be unlawful. It's still government de facto because it's not being ran by the people. But it still has to remain lawful, full of law. It can't subvert the laws of its own creation, which is kind of what they did, but there's still that corporate constitution, and they have to abide by that. per the laws of nations. Okay? So our rights don't change. Right? Because that's over here. Bills of Rights, Declaration of Rights that laid down the law, which comes before the Constitution. So when we're talking about exercising the right of petition for the redress of grievances, that right dictates it goes to the legislative branch, our representatives, or actually we get to instruct them. That right is a right retained by the people, as even to man, the inhabitants, have the right to petition for the redress of their grievances from government. This has to do with government, right? Or asking them in the private for a specific thing. So we can still claim and exercise the right of petition for the redress of grievances because that's part of the fundamental law of our nation called America and in each country. So we can't deny that because that's providing those essential services. We cannot, where there's a right, there must be a remedy and relief. You can't deprive that. What's the process? Well, the process doesn't change. Well, in its essence, it does because we're not properly assembled over here. So what we think is the legislative branch today is different in the government de facto than it is in government de jure, where that process would dictate and who it goes through and the channels and the remedy to get to the relief is different in the government de facto than it is in the government de jure. Because when the government de jure is assembled, we have these committees that are actually filling the seats by the representatives themselves. Where in the government de jure, properly assembled, those committees are in our communities and not part of the legislative branch, but it is, and this is why I say this is all the first branch of government. Right? So, because this has to come first.
Right.
So how it's supposed to work, and in reading some of the former constitutions and stuff, I found through history is, well, wait a minute. The church is part of the assembly because the church is the body of the people. And so what we did was peacefully assembled on what we'd call Sundays, or some do Saturdays according to their religion, the free exercise and practice of their religion. They chose their day of rest. Okay. And the way it's supposed to work is you go to church. Hey, I've got this grievance here. This is how it's supposed to work in the government de jure, and where the people have all the power. Not government, the people have all of it. Only certain powers have been granted per the Constitution. These powers were retained by the people. Our de jure Republican form of government is the common law side versus the Roman civil law, the code. Okay, so on the common law side of our form of government, the people are part of the legislative branch before the Constitution, and we're supposed to be doing our petitions to assemble the common law grand jury to do grand jury indictments against a public servant. That's how that's supposed to be done over here in the private side at the common law, suits at common law.
And it's not, yeah.
That's what the Article, the 7th or 7th Amendment's referring to.
Okay.
They want to construe that as, oh, well, that just means civil. No. Suits at common law can be criminal in nature or civil in nature. This over here, if you read Article 3, Section 2, the only jurisdictions it's in there is admiralty jurisdiction and maritime law. That's, law of the water. Not law of the land. Law of the water. Maritime, marine time, water, commerce, trade. The people acting in commerce is what they instituted government to secure their rights to be acting in trade, and government's supposed to be this tiny little thing. Very, very, very limited. And that's all it's really supposed to be, is protecting the ones that are acting in trade. And that's it. That's Federalist 45. Otherwise, we're all over here in the private at common law. This body of law. And how our de jure Republican form of government is supposed to be as the people at common law take care of business down here in the private, and we remove public servants from office over here, not over there, unless they're under admiralty jurisdiction. Military. Commander-in-Chief, Attorney General. That is a rank in the military. Governor, Commander-in-Chief. That is a rank in the military. Under the governor in the states, right, our country, those are admiralty jurisdiction.
Right.
So that's the jurisdiction they bind themselves to when they become a member of the legislative, executive, or judicial branch. You're binding yourself to admiralty jurisdiction.
So I hope you enjoyed this first part with Kirk. And coming up next, part 2. And this time we'll be answering questions. Thanks.